please give us your support with the like button and in the comment section as well. But let's get into the SHTF news. We've got a lot to get through tonight.
And now, the news. Stand by. In 3, 2, 1.
Shuffle, shuffle. Welcome to SHTF News tonight, 13th of November, coming to you live. Thank you everyone for being here. And so yes, with your host Andy, we'll be getting through our agenda of SHTF, what's hitting the fan today, news. So we'll be starting off as usual with our top stories, and we'll be figuring out what we need to know. And I tell you what, there's a little bit of a theme going on tonight, so hold on to your seats. This could be a long one. So let's start off with the top stories and we'll see what we got in store for you today. So here we got the World Economic Forum, obviously Great Reset and all that. They're talking about stats showing how digital IDs can accelerate national economies. I don't know what sort of mental gymnastics you got to go through to come up with that, but a new World Economic Forum, every time I go to read that thing, I nearly say something else. You know what I'm talking about. A new World Economic Forum white paper finds reason to believe that digital ID programs will be decisive in modernized financial services. In turn, those digitized services will play a growing role in the global economic recovery from the COVID pandemic. Right, okay. So basically, it will be the catalyst of a more fully digital future, right? And they go on to talk about it being a part of banks and social credit scoring and all sorts of other bits and pieces, and obviously the vaccine information and various other things like that. So yeah, as we expect, that's the kind of things. And look at this all ties into it as well. Look what I found here, emergency response biometrics, and look at the way they gauge this is fascinating, right? HID global fingerprint reader, info face tool launched, right? So basically what this is a little handheld device which is like a pocket reader, right? And it's got a scanner that does fingerprint, and straight away it can store all of your information, and it can do facial recognition straight away. And the way they talk about it here is like, for example, first responders, this is brilliant, first responders will then be able to take photos of info users, as in, in case of emergency, and using the software's face biometrics capabilities, access the individual's previously uploaded information in case they are unconscious or unresponsive or being held back in handcuffs. Or just they've got it clipped on their pocket and it happens to be looking at you while they're talking to you would be enough, wouldn't it? And they'd already know who you are, right? And they'd know if you'd been vaccinated or not. So, and this is basically what it's talking about, is giving it a layer of a sort of security with things like their healthcare records and things like that. But they talk about it in the event of them being injured, incapacitated or deceased, but we know what's really going on there, right? So anyway, next. And look, you see the pattern here. Integration of blockchain and biometrics to redefine digital identity by 2030. This report goes on to say, look, behavioural biometrics, digital government, e-commerce, banking and airport security could see some of the biggest and most notable changes over the next decade as develops in artificial intelligence. So basically what they're talking about, right, is, you know, blockchain technology being an unhackable, uncopyable, get in the way of a ball system of identification, combined with biometrics in terms of all your medical health data, as well as your unique fingerprint, retina scan, you know, internal scans and all the rest of the things that make up you, palm scans. There's all sorts of techniques now that can be used as identification means that are all unique to you. But combining that with blockchain technology and essentially being able to track every single thing, resulting in the establishment of a single token digital identity for individuals, right? And basically what they're talking about here, it talks about, like, if your growth in technologies protect individuals and organization, we're here to protect you. As hackers adopt refined technologies to disrupt and bypass security systems as a result of their flexibility and high security, multimodal. Again, what they go on to talk about here is about this becoming also part of you even being able to have access to the internet, right? So you won't even be able to go online unless you've got your biometric blockchain-based ID thing. I don't want to say too much, but I kind of know what this is and what is already happening that this is part of, and I'll be talking to people, my own VIP patrons, about that personally, one-to-one, about what's going on. Obviously, my background's electronic, robotic, mechanical, software engineer. I've worked actually with a lot of these technologies, and I've been a consultant for things like biometric ID and security systems, so I know a little bit more than most. So yeah, this is hardcore stuff, people. Do not ignore it, is what I will say, right? Moving on. 58,000 agricultural facilities in northeast China's Liaoning, affected by record snowstorms. So what this goes on to talk about is all the crop losses here. Look, you're talking 37,000 hectares, look, yeah, of cropland damaged. And all like 58,000 facilities, and affected total of 4,836 livestock farms. Not livestock, but livestock farms, right? And we're talking blackouts, we're talking rolling blackouts, we're talking snow that's covered on, ruin the crops. Now bear in mind, this all comes at a time, right, where there are already food shortages everywhere. There's already supply chain issues adding to the food shortages, and the food shortages aren't from the supply issues. The supply issues are on top of the food shortages because of things like this, right? These were happening last year as well with crop losses and things, with the adverse weather events and things like that, right? Particularly frosts, early frosts, ice not clearing up before it should have done, all the way through to other places experiencing droughts across the planet. And bear in mind, 18 months is the key, right? 18 months is the time it takes to go from the actual crops in the field to the store on the shelf where you see it or don't see it because it's not there, if you know what I mean. So the things that we're seeing happening now all get built up into a pipeline that's in a certain order of events. And so this was why last year, more than 12 months ago now, I was telling people what was going to happen this year about now, because of what happened before. You add on the 18 months and you know when it's already going to pan out and filter down to through the JIT system, the just-in-time system, out the other end onto the shelves. It's about 18 months, right? Obviously fresh vegetable and produce is a bit different, but I'm talking about stuff in the cans, stuff in the packets, right? It's about 18 months. So this is not good news, and China's already stopped a lot of its exports of food because it already knows it doesn't have enough to feed its own people. And at the same time, part of their governmental ministers have been actually telling people to stockpile enough food to survive for a year. Ask yourself why they're telling their people to do that. People started rushing out and panic buying, and guess what? Government comes out then the next day going, by the way, don't panic buy because, you know, don't worry about it. Amazing. So, moving on. Increased gas emissions at White Island Volcano. So, this is a volcano in New Zealand that's just started the emissions. It's not too severe, but it has caused some aviation yellow flagging. So, they need to avoid that space. Of course, we had that air accident a while ago as a result of flying through volcanic dust, which acts like an actual sandblaster and clogs up all of the turbine blades. It's not a good look. So yeah, you need to be careful of that. So we're seeing this a lot around the world. Of course, you know, we'll be getting onto the disaster map with the earthquakes and volcanoes next up after these top stories, and we'll have a look and see what La Palma's up to, because that's still rocking about. So we need to keep our eye out on all these other volcanoes popping off. I think Iceland started showing activity. That classic one in Iceland, that was the one that caused a lot of the problems with the flight routes going from the UK, which is one of Heathrow's second biggest airport in the world, is it? So that caused a lot of problems with things like aviation. I would go as far as saying we probably don't need to worry quite as much about that now, because there's not as many people flying as many places as they used to, if you know what I mean. Very bright fireball seen over Western Japan. Everyone's got to love seeing the fireballs. So I've got a video here which is super duper. Let's have a little look and see how it looked. Here we go. Green look. Boom. What does that mean? Copper content? Correct me if I'm wrong. Copper content, I believe, if you see green. And then it goes into pink, which I believe is... It's not phosphorus, is it? What's pink? Forget, let me know in the chat. And we'll have a look after the SHTF news. But yeah, and there was also a large fireball that went straight up the east coast of America, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have that open tonight, but I think that was a few days ago now. And that was seen by a lot of the entirety of the east coast of America. So yeah, So let's have a look. We've got all on in terms of this, part of space weather really, but asteroid 2021 flew past Earth at 0.15 lunar distance. So when we talk about close encounters with the asteroid kind, we typically talk in lunar distance, where we're talking about between about 270, 300,000 kilometers miles away from Earth. And so when you're talking about 0.15, you're talking about 20,000. You will show you here. Where is it? 36,000 miles, 58,000 kilometers. But bear in mind, if I'm not mistaken, when they talk about lunar distance, it's actually, I read somewhere that that's based on the center point of that planet or moon to the center point of our planet when we talk about a lunar distance. And if we're talking about an AU, which is your solar distance to the sun, like a lunar distance, right? So that's pretty close when you consider a certain amount of that distance is taken up with the radius, right? So, yeah, it looks like there's a bit of space debris activity. And we've got this more snow coming for our bird up here, look, which apparently is not going to be good. So that's going to be happening over the 13th and the 14th. So tonight, over midnight as well. So we'll keep our eye on that and hope everyone's going to be safe for that. FDA alert, 2 million at-home COVID-19 tests recalled over false positives. That's about the 5th test kit I've seen now being recalled for false positive. I've never seen one recalled for false negatives. And then we got this one here. Obviously, the 5 to 11-year-olds are now up for the old jabberoo. So as a result of that, Pfizer seems to have added a new ingredient into it. No one quite knows, how much of it or whatever, but it's the same stuff that you use to avoid heart attacks, and when you read into it, it's basically it affects the pH value of the blood, which is one of the things that can, was leading to all these heart attacks and things, right, that we've seen happening. So hopefully this doesn't do something other than what it's supposed to. So, and then we've got Australia says COVID shots will be forever, every 6 to 12 months until you die. What a headline is that? It's just amazing. So yeah, that's always you got that to bear in mind as well. So that's the top stories. I hope you enjoyed the top stories for today. We're blasting through, so let's get straight into the disaster maps, and we'll see what we got in store for you with the disaster maps. And boom, here we go. Not an awful lot going on, of course, for some of the things I've already mentioned, and we've got a volcano eruption there in Russia as well, 12 minutes ago, but that was first reported 25 days ago. So a lot of these are sort of ongoing active volcanoes. A lot of them you see in here all the time. Some of them are new, few wildfires, but it doesn't look like there's anything drastic about to happen anywhere particularly. So at the moment, of course, you've got the La Palma there, which we'll check in on separately. So not too much to be worried about there. Latest earthquakes, again, looking at the USGS map, which is becoming more and more unreliable, but even now we're seeing 37 quakes today in the last 24 hours of 2.5 and above. And we've got an earthquake question in the Truth or Trivia later on tonight, so make sure you stay tuned for that, because if you know anything about earthquakes, you might do all right on it. So yeah, we've had a few. I'll tell you what I have seen is a massive increase in sort of late 4s and 5 magnitude earthquakes. And again, we have to now look at a separate earthquake map to get the La Palma ones, because they seem to have been censoring them on the USGS one now. So now we have to go here separately. But I'll tell you what, I will say it looks like the actual earthquake activity around La Palma is less, but the magnitude is more. So there's fewer of them. If you remember last week, I think it was 41 of them off the top of my head. And here we're talking about there being one quake of magnitude 5.0. That's quite a lot. I've been in a 5.6 that was about 10 kilometers away. That was pretty epic. I thought a 747 jumbo jet had crashed in the street next door to our street. Right, that's what it felt like. So a 5.0 on a place like that is already vulnerable is not great. But the number of the smaller quakes seem to be less. And that's not always a good sign, bear in mind, particularly when I see the depth of these earthquakes becoming lower and lower. This is new. When I check on this maybe every couple of days, you very rarely see these quakes low down like this. This is the depth chart as though you're looking from the side, yeah, over time. And so you can see these ones over the last few days. Look, what's that? The 12th of November. Since then, we've had a lot of these deep ones. That's not a good sign, especially when you start seeing a reduction of the earthquakes, because it could mean that parts of it are starting to grab And when sort of two plates or two parts of that mountain, the side of the volcano, start to stick, you're not releasing the energy smoothly over time. You're better off having loads of quakes every day, small ones, than you are it just stopping, because guess what happens when that energy builds up enough? It's boom. It's like a pressure cooker, right? It's bad news. So we don't really want to see these earthquakes suddenly drop off and we only start seeing deep, big ones, because so we need to keep our eye out on that. And again, I'll be coming to you during the week with breaking SHTF news reports on at least like every other day, perhaps as well. So as a result of La Palma, we do like to check in on the windy map with the SO2 levels with the sulfur. We can see what sort of chance of acid rain there's going to be as a result of all these emissions. And you can see there's quite a lot of things going on around the world here, look. And you'll notice always typically in the northern hemisphere, which is why a lot of people like the elites build their bunkers in places like New Zealand. Check it out. Do you think that's a coincidence? Yeah. It's also thought that during a nuclear war, during nuclear fallout, all of the fallout remains because of the ocean currents and because of the wind currents and things like that. And the vortexes, typically all of the fallout would remain in the northern hemisphere. So when you see lots of mountainside land and things like that being sold to the elites around the world, if you look, then you'll say, why New Zealand? Why are they all building bunkers in New Zealand? And you think, southern hemisphere, no fallout, and look how clean it is. They've got nothing around them. So yeah, anyone who's however, that doesn't necessarily mean that New Zealand's the best place to be politically, but if you're an elite, I suppose that doesn't matter, does it? So that's about it for the earthquakes and the windy map. Sometimes what we like to do, though, is to also check in on the live video footage of the La Palma earthquake, La Palma volcano, sorry. And I usually like to have that up here for you. So let's have a quick look then and get that up live, and we'll just check in and see how it looks. Because if we do that every week, you see, it will allow us to be able to sort of, on an ongoing basis, sort of compare how it looked last week compared to this week and so on. Yeah, here's the one I like to see. So I wanted to use the official channel. So let's pop onto there, look for you. So it's a bit of a funny angle, this one. There's another camera that's got several other angles, but down the bottom here that you can't see, there's a lot of symbols, and a lot of people don't seem to know what these mean. I see people in the comments asking, what does that mean? But basically what it's talking about here, which you can't see, is in the way of the... But you're talking about a visibility of 9 kilometers. That's not actually that bad. You've got 14,000 tons a day. Funnily enough, last week when I looked at that, I think it was 9,000 tons a day. So it's 14,000 tons a day being emitted. Right? 14,000 tons a day. Imagine that. 66 cubic meters a second. Being launched, right? So if you go on any of the official sources for the live video feed from La Palma, you'll see those icons down the bottom, and intuitively you should be able to work out what's what. But it's quite interesting to look at, and if your brain's like mine, where it sort of recognizes these patterns subtly, subliminally, then again, when I see it on a regular basis, you'll know what's bad compared to before. We'll be able to extrapolate forward based on, is the trend getting worse or is it looking like it's dying down? But don't forget the caveat to that. If the earthquakes suddenly stop, and they stop for a while, it could be pressure building up, which could be a bad sign, right? Which in fact is why not that long ago, there was one of the politicians was suggesting actually putting an ordnance explosive in the volcano to try and get it shifted, right? And they've talked about doing that with things like the fault, San Andreas fault as well, and putting strategically positioned sort of tactical nukes essentially in the fault lines in a place to sort of help it to dislodge bit by bit over time rather than allowing it to build up. So there is some sense behind that, but you're playing with fire very literally. So I wouldn't want to be you playing around with that. So let's have a look at the agenda, what we got through then. So disaster maps, of course. Next up we've got the space weather, which a lot of people enjoy. So let's jump into Solar Ham, see what it's got in store for us today. Start off in Solar Ham here, and it's pretty quiet at the moment, but what I would say is that we've got this one sunspot here, 2894, look, who's ready, that's all readied up. And so we've basically got this is all we got on the solar disk Earth facing at the moment, is this 2894, which is pretty Earth facing, to be honest. That's bang on target for hitting us. Maybe in about a day and a half that will have rotated enough to be perfectly aligned. It needs to shoot just ahead of us, and then we move into it as we transition around the sun. I'll show you that here actually with the Enlil spiral, which shows that clearly. Look, and in case the Enlil spiral is good to look at because you can see if there's anything anticipated. You see this spike, green spike here over the way, but as you can see, that's more of a coronal hole stream. That's nothing to do with an actual CME coming over. And for those that aren't familiar, the yellow dot there is the sun, and this is looking down on our solar system from above, if you like, and this lower segment here is looking from the side. And so you can see that there's not much coming towards us, but there is that wave that hits us there. But like I say, that's not anything to be worried about. So we're looking all right, but you can see what I mean there about it needs to shoot it out in front of itself, and then we travel into it, yeah. But the sun is rotating at one rotation per 28 days, which is why I say in a few days' time, that sunspot there, 2894, would have rotated round a few, maybe 15 degrees or something to be able to be perfect bang on. But it's pretty, at the moment it's looking all right. And one way you can tell is when you look at these active sunspots here, you see here the magnetic class is beta on this one. And then this one that's more Earth facing here, the 2894 I was just mentioning, is you see it says beta gamma. And when you zoom into here, you see what you'll find is that the beta and gamma is the red and the green, and the blue is the delta. And when the delta moves in between and starts mixing around with this beta and gamma is when you get solar flares and sort of filaments building up and stuff like that, right? And they become unstable. So if you want to check in on yourself and you don't want to, if you want to know if something's going to look bad or not, if you see this as a red, green and blue, a delta, gamma and let's go back here, you'll see it come up here, beta, gamma and delta configuration, then you know it's like lined up to be a little bit of a potential. So if we only see beta, gamma there, we don't have to be quite as worried, but just bear in mind there is that field area there of the blue, which is the delta. If that starts moving in between all that, we could see some extra activity in there. So bear that in mind, right? But other than that, there's not too much going on with the space weather, so that's good to see. And again, quick way to check up here on the space weather here from the NOAA. And we've got all green boxes up the top there, so that's the easy way just to check in on that and make sure we're all good in the hood. And we are indeed all good in the hood. So that's the space weather done and dusted. Nothing to worry about there. Cyberspace. Let's see if we can say the same for what's going on out there in the interwebs of Ting and see if there's any reason for us to be worried at all. And looking like an average day again. Max, the top attack target today, the last 24 hours, has been the United Kingdom with 3.1 billion attacks, followed by United States with 1.1. I'd call that a really quiet day, to be honest. Not epically quiet, but the fact that second place United States is only at 1.1 billion there. I've seen this at like 4 billion as an average and about 3 billion as a number 2 place. So, it's not looking too bad today. And again, I checked in on the Downdetector for everyone. Apart from this square here, which I'm not familiar with, Battlefield looked like it's just got over some problems, but you shouldn't be playing any games anyway. You should be watching the Ultimate Live show. We'll just refresh that quickly, see if anything news happened. Nah. It looks like Square's getting over its outage it had there. So yeah, it's looking like the interwebs are looking clean and clear today. So we haven't got to worry too much about that. So what's up next? I think we're down to the last part of the SHTF news, which is the markets. So let's have a look and see what's going on with the cryptos and the Bitcoin and Ting. And you'll see here, Bitcoin's looking green. We've got a good amount of green in here. This AVAX is going pretty epic here. That's been shooting up like 24% the last sort of week or something like that, 14% the last 24 hours. So that's doing well. And OMG looks like it's struggling down there, and the LRC is not doing well as well. That's behind me, by the way. Whoop. So yeah, I'll tell you what though, it's absolutely storming through. I mean, we were touching on like more than $65,000 of Bitcoin before, and I did see this peak at 3 trillion total market cap, which it hasn't been before. So we are starting to see all-time highs on the overall market cap. You see on the left-hand side here, you've got the 3 trillion mark, right? You see, we might be able to get the pinpoint on it, but it just peaked up 2.9. What did I just say on there? I got it to say 2.9 something, but it just peaked at 3 trillion. And we just dropped back a bit now, but it's about normal. And yeah, so it's definitely on the up and up. I'm looking through the news and things. There's nothing too epic going on, to be honest. But there seems to be a lot about this FTX.US, which is overtaking Coinbase as the most liquid US regulated crypto exchange. So obviously Coinbase was the most trending app about 6 months ago. So that's an indication of adoption, and that's an indication of obviously people looking more and more into their opportunities there with the crypto markets and to understand blockchain technologies more and more. And again, as I've said before, I'll be bringing various other videos along to help people understand more the crypto side of stuff. As a computer programmer point of view and somebody who understands global economics and stuff as well, it's quite helpful to combine the two and have a decent talk about, you know, what it's all about, what the threats are, what the benefits are, and sort of almost like a SWOT analysis we can do, right? And I can literally answer any questions anyone's got about anything to do with it, right? I want to be here to help everybody, because judging by earlier on in our top stories, don't forget, as you can see, this blockchain business ain't going anywhere, right? And if the governments are using it for things like, you know, biometric and ID tracking and goodness knows what, there's no point in avoiding it. So you might as well get familiar with it and start to understand it yourself, and then you can be ahead of the game, and then you know, sort of that can be an opportunity rather than it being a potential threat or, you know, something to be fearful of, right? So I hope I can bring some sort of clarity to people on that front. So let me know if you're up for that in the chat, yeah? So, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's looking all right out there. But we had quite a few segments here, but I hope you enjoyed the SHTF news from me, Andy, tonight on the 13th of November.